And our lesson this morning is from the Gospels. It's from Matthew 5, again, continuing the Sermon on the Mount. Last week we looked at the Beatitudes, the blessed are you passages, and we remember that we are blessed with those qualities. Our job is to claim those blessings. And Jesus continues this message to all those within his hearing. And Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." This is the word of God for the people of God. Please be seated. Jesus is speaking to the Israelites, a community that from Abraham were called out to cover the earth with God's light and love. Yet, once again, they are a community in conflict regarding how they are going to survive. They are again in captivity, and they have different ideas on how they should live in captivity. One group, the Sadducees, were all about, we just need to get along. We need to collaborate with our oppressors. We need to live like them, do like them. That's how we're going to survive as a community. Well, then we're the Zealots. And the Zealots were all about, we need to break free. We need to fight. We need to gather arms, fight fire with fire, fight force with force, fight soldiers with soldiers. Let's get an army and just kill them all. And then there were the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were, we are a people called apart. We are holy and righteous. And we can't let ourselves be contaminated by the world. And so their whole thing was, live by the law, the Torah, the rules that God gave us, all those directions. Those are what will keep us pure. Those are what will keep us holy. Those are what we need to survive, is to just keep ourselves apart and not let anybody touch us. Let's just close ourselves in. And here comes Jesus. The people are like, this one, who, what one speaks to my heart, which one is right? And Jesus comes to them and says, I've got a different plan. I've got a different way for you. Actually, I've got the way for you to be. And he says, be who God created you to be. You're Israel, be Israel. What? And he says, God has given you the blessings. God has made you peacemakers. Claim that and be peacemakers. God has made you mournful. Mournful for righteousness. Mournful for the cruelty in the world. God has made you hungry. Hungry for making the world right. For right living. God has made you persecuted because you are standing up against all these other things. God has made you salt. You, all of you who hear my voice, all of you who may be Sadducees or Zealots or Pharisees, and I have a feeling there are Sadducees and Pharisees and Zealots even out here. I do believe there are. You are all salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. This isn't a you can be. This is a very emphatic, it is you, is what that one word means. It is you who are the salt. It is you who are the light. Go do it. You are meant to be a light that shines on the world and shows where there's hardship, shows where there's beauty. You are meant to be in the world, flavoring it. Elizabeth just told me that saltiness is a bad thing now. Who knew? Words change their meaning. Yeah, she says, yeah, when somebody does something wrong, they just say, that's so salty, Miss Griggs. It's like, what? But for our purposes, we're using Jesus' understanding of saltiness. Saltiness was a good thing. Salt and light to these people were precious. Pure salt was hard to come by. They didn't have our ability to mine salt. And so salt always had other contaminants in it. Other minerals, other elements, other materials. And the more contaminated it was, the more it lost our salt. Even our salt loses its saltiness. I could tell that the salt shaker I found down in the kitchen, and you can kind of tell, has been kind of contaminated because instead of like falling, it's all kind of caked there in the salt shaker. Moisture gets in and it gets caked and it loses some of its quality. It's not some magical, chemical reaction that changes the salt. It's the salt being contaminated, getting other things mixed in it that causes it to lose its salt. And Jesus is saying, when you let other things get mixed in with who you are, you lose some of your saltiness. Jesus is saying, you have been lit from within by God. God has called you apart so that you can be a shining light that will show the world how to be, where to be. But for some reason, you Pharisees, you're saying, let's cover it up. Let's put the bushel over us so no one can see us. Because if they can't see us, they can't get us. And we have that tendency. We want to pull the wagons in, circle them, not let anybody come because they hurt when they come. They hurt us. So let's just hunker down and just be us. That's not the way Jesus says we are either. What purpose is the light if we just hide it? That's not why you were created. You were created to shine. We often use this passage as you each are given gifts and graces and you need to let your individual light shine and go do your whatever, your gift. And that's a good interpretation, but that I don't think is the best interpretation. Because Jesus is talking to a group and he's using a plural you. And he's speaking about the kingdom of heaven and how you bring the kingdom of heaven on earth. And it's not by shining my light. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, but it's not my light. It is the light of God that shines through me that I shine to the world. That's what we're called to do. Shine God's light to the world. There's a story about a woman who had heard her preacher talk about the salt and the light, and all she got out of it is, I'm not very salty and I'm not very bright. I don't have words that are pungent that can affect people, and I don't really have all those many gifts that are bright that can win people over to Christ. And she was mulling that over on Monday morning as she went to make soup for the day. And she needed some potatoes, and the potatoes were kept down in the cellar. There are places in the world that have cellars, Oklahoma. And cellars were dark and damp and good places to keep the potatoes because they were cool. And she went to the darkest corner where the potatoes were, and she went to grab a couple, and well, some of them had sprouted. And she thought, well, how can they sprout in the dark? And she stood there a moment And just then, the sun came out from behind a cloud and shone through the window and bounced off a copper kettle she had stored in the basement and reflected onto those potatoes right where they were sprouting. And she stood there a moment and she said, I might not be able to be salt or light, but I think I could be a copper kettle. I can reflect the light that God has already given me. And I can help a few of those old taters sprout a little bit. We can't all be Bob Long. We can't all be Muzan Biggs. We can't all be Adam Hamilton. Not that we wish to be. There's no pulpit envy here. We can't all be Billy Graham. We can't all be Oral Roberts. We can't all be great orators. We can't all be some of the best teachers. We can't all have voices like Christy or musician skills like our guys have. But there's not a one of us that can't be just a plain old copper kettle. There's not a one of us that can't take the light that God has given us, those blessings that we talked about last week, the blessings of being a peacemaker, the blessings of mourning the wrongs in this world, the blessings of hungering for the rights in this world, the blessings of knowing you've stepped on toes in order to make things right. There's not a one of us that can't take those blessings and be a little salty in a good way out in the world. We can sprinkle ourselves down the way Brad sprinkled the rock salt on the sidewalk. And we can make the footing a little more sure for the person that's coming behind us. We can do that. And that's all God is asking us to do. God says, you are salt. You are light. Go be it. Go be it. As we come to prayer, let us ask not only how can I individually be salt and be light, but ask ourselves how we as a church can be salt and light. Those are the questions we're looking at in our visioning. Those are the questions Monica has sent out. Those are the questions God is asking us to ask ourselves today. How can we be salty? How can we be light? Let us go to God in prayer.